from Buffalo all the way to Long Island for weeks 1 and 2 of the NFL season, and it felt like I was watching the games at home, despite that I don't get the Bills game on cable out on Long Island. But that's another story. I'm only a minute and a half behind you guys. So I see all the action, I know it all, and someone else who really knows a lot is my guest here today from Locked On Rams, Sosa Kremenjas. Did I say that?
Got it.
I got it? Okay, I'm 3 for 3 on last names I don't know how to pronounce on this show this year, so this is huge. How's it going over there?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be probably one hell of a matchup this weekend between 2 of the 11 unbeaten NFL teams left. So I'm just excited to see what happens. Obviously the Bills look really good, but the Jets and the Dolphins are kind of a different story as opposed to the Rams, right? So
yeah,
I feel like, this has the potential to maybe be the best game of the weekend.
Yeah, maybe not beating Rams Chiefs, but it could be a really close second. Before we get into all the Bills Rams talk we're gonna do, I have a new segment, possible one-time segment. I'm gonna call it my weekly Winston, and that is just something so crazy that it might actually work, like starting Jameis Winston in a fantasy league. And so this week, Survivor pools are nutty. Like, I don't really know what to do. I think I'm going to go, we'll kind of go back and forth saying who we could pick for Survivor. Like, usually want to ride the Chiefs, the Ravens, they're playing each other. But, the Dolphins don't have Byron Jones, and I'm a gambling man, okay? So if I'm a gambling man, I might want to take a ride on Minshew Mania on Thursday night against the Dolphins. I mean, in a week where there's so much uncertainty, I think that could actually be maybe not a good pick. I won't say it's a good pick, but it could work out and you save some teams for the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's risky, right? I feel like you said, I feel like this game is so bad that it actually might be good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like 2 quarterbacks that just don't give a damn. They're going to sling it, no questions asked. They're letting it rip. And, it's like 2 teams that are bottom 5, maybe bottom 10 for sure, but, damn, this might actually be entertaining. So,
yeah.
I mean, for me, it depends on, I guess how you go about it. Like, if you don't want to use one of the good teams early, obviously, I get that. But,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like Cleveland, against Washington, Cleveland would probably be a pretty good pick. Washington just, I don't know how they won in week 1, to be honest. I still, can't wrap my head around it, to be honest.
No idea.
I know the defensive line is unreal. They're going to cause a lot of issues for quarterbacks every single week this season. But, I mean, outside of that, what do they have, really? The offense looks absolutely terrible. And, you know what I mean?
Dwayne Haskins ain't it. He ain't it.
I mean, I wouldn't even be opposed to suggesting, picking whoever's playing Washington every week for the rest of the year. Is something crazy like that.
Yeah, that was my plan. I was going against the Jets, but, Phil Rivers doesn't look good. If I were to make another pick, my backup and the team I'll actually probably go with is the Chargers over the McCaffrey-less Panthers. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is throwing for a lot of yards, but that's just because the defense is so bad. Herbert looked good, and since, the team doctors don't know what they're doing with Tyrod, I don't think he's going to actually start. You probably feel good being, covering the other LA team.
Yeah, I mean...
But, I think the Chargers, I think that they're probably the closest lock for a win that you get this week, but I still don't feel good about even that one.
Yeah, I mean, I might go with the guy you just slandered, a little bit of Phil Rivers. I know, like you said, even I'm definitely concerned about him. I mean, 1 week he looks and the offense looks just horrible, and then the next week, last week they costed me a lot of money because I picked the damn Vikings to cover.
No,
they weren't favored. They were supposed to cover by 3, and they just got blasted, which cost me a lot of money. But I mean, it's the Jets. I don't trust the Jets. I don't think Le'Veon Bell's gonna play.
No, probably not.
Sam Darnold and Frank Gore. I don't know. That doesn't really strike fear into many hearts. So. I would probably go with the Colts, but I would definitely be a little bit, uneasy and concerned with that pick.
Yeah, I mean, I just there's nothing I can do. Just how the 1 week they're using Nyheim Hines like he's Austin Eckler from last year. The next week they don't look like they know what they're doing, but they still win by double digits. I guess I don't really know. And the only other team I consider taking, I think, is the Bucks, just because, the matchup against, I already forgot who they're playing. Are you looking at it right now?
The
Broncos, that's right. Yeah, that's why I wanted to take the Bucks. Thank you. Just because, Jeff Driscoll he's a guy, he might be better than Drew Lock at this stage in his career, but, it's it's more not even picking Brady because I don't think he's good anymore. I think he's gonna have a Peyton Manning of his last year kind of year and just get carried by the rest of his team. But that's enough shit talking Brady for a Bills show. We get enough of that.
Right.
But
Yeah, you guys must have piled on for the last 2 decades now. You got to make up for it.
yeah, we couldn't pile on him for forever, so we got to do it now. But
Yeah.
for me, it's going between the Chargers and the Bucks, and if I want to feel a little little adventurous, I'll go with the Jaguars maybe.
Yeah. So for me, I guess it depends on the health of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, true.
49ers versus the Giants. I think that's probably going to be a relatively easy pick, especially, the Giants don't have Saquon Barkley now. He tore his ACL.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it really boils down to whether or not Jimmy Garoppolo plays. I know the 49ers are banged up literally from top down. I mean, they lost so many players. It's not even, I lost count, to be honest. So
yeah.
but,
And their plane got hit on the runway in New York, too, so.
Did it really?
Yeah, no, actually, that was a thing.
Oh, my.
Oh, my, yeah.
That's they're not. They don't have much good fortunes after that Super Bowl run. But if Garoppolo plays, I would feel pretty good about it. If not, I definitely wouldn't pick them. I guess in that scenario, I'd maybe go a little risky and pick someone maybe like the Falcons. I don't think the Bears can keep up with them offensively. Now the Bears have a really good defense, but I mean at some point, they got to score points and. Like I know again, the Falcons don't have a good defense either, the secondary especially. But I would feel pretty comfortable knowing that the Falcons are 0-2. They can't lose another game. The Bears are 2-0. They don't have as much pressure on them.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I do think the Falcons could probably put up 25-30 pretty much against any defense in the league. So I would put some faith in there.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Trubisky's one of those guys, like, every time I picked against him, he just burns me. So I just, that's just one of those roads I don't want to go down, like drafting Devontae Parker in fantasy. But, that's another thing.
We all have those guys that just terrify us for absolutely no reason at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, Trubisky's one of them for me. So I thought he was good. Now I think he's awful. Now I think he might be good. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that the Rams and the Bills play Sunday. We've got a lot of people who are here probably telling us to shut the hell up about Survivor picks, so we'll move into this Sunday. The Rams have been kind of surprising to me at the very least. After last season, I don't know how much I expected from them, especially losing Todd Gurley. It was probably like addition by subtraction, just because if he's there, you have to feed him, and it seemed like things weren't going well between you guys there. But Goff looks good. Defense looks good. The offense as a whole is just really humming. Higbee's doing really well, as a tight end one without Everett. But they are in what's probably the most talented division in football. I think they're a collective 7-1 right now, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So, kind of what was the expectation for the Rams before the season started, and how has that changed after two pretty convincing wins?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it really depends on who you're asking, right? So for me personally, I expected them to bounce back. I knew that, 2018, they go to the Super Bowl. They looked incredible. Mm-hmm. Everyone expected them to go to the Super Bowl. They had somewhat of a dream team kind of offseason.
Yeah, so they did.
Everyone expected it, and it came to fruition. And then 2019, obviously, things went south really quickly. There was a couple of injuries, and then, Sean McVay's scheme kind of got a little bit stale, and people started to, game plan against them, and it obviously worked because the offense was nowhere near as good as it was in 2018. But for me, the Rams, this offseason, they finally hired an actual, legitimate, real offensive coordinator again after not having one in 2019. His name's Kevin O'Connell. He came from Washington. And so I knew that his addition was going to be very underrated and very important in terms of, just having another really good offensive mind in the building and someone who can kind of nudge Sean McVay and, be two guys that they could put their brains together and kind of come up with creative ideas to, go against certain defenses that stifled them in 2019. And so me personally, I expected the Rams to go somewhere between 10-6 and 11-5, depending on, how the ball bounces. Okay. But, I understand that a lot of, big media and like major companies and major minds and whatever, they were very reserved on the Rams. I think if you looked around, the league just in general, majority of the people who had, predictions or opinions or whatever, they were not high on the Rams. A lot of people had them going 8-8 or, winning 6 games or 7. And so I get it, but at the same time, I think they didn't take into effect just how, talented Sean McVay is, how good of a mind he is, and how talented the Rams are at the end of the day. Like, yeah, they had, some holes last year that were, uncovered and kind of, they couldn't step up, unfortunately. But, this is a team who just added a lot more weapons, who already had a lot of good weapons.
Yeah.
Restocked on the offense. The offensive line is playing way better than pretty much anyone expected, especially me.
Oh, yeah.
And the defense should be playing relatively well, at least. Now they have a lot of question marks there, so I get, some concerns. But, they got Aaron Donald, who's the best player in football. They got Jalen Ramsey, who they traded a bunch for and paid a ton for. And got other guys on that, side of the ball, like Michael Brockers and John Johnson, who they have played very well in the past. And so for me personally, I guess I wouldn't say I'm surprised. Now, coming into the season, if you had told me that they would go 2-0 to start the season, I would be like, whoa, like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll take that all day. But I think obviously with how they played the last 2 weeks and, how convincing they've looked in those wins, they played the Cowboys in week 1 and the defense looked fantastic against what could be the best, most talented offense in football in the Cowboys. And then last week, the Eagles never really looked like they really had a shot. I mean, to be honest.
No, they're so overrated, honestly. They really are.
Yeah. And so, I don't think it's so much that they're 2-0. I think it's how they got to 2-0 that's got people saying like, oh, you know what, we may have underrated this team. And so for me personally, I think they're kind of along where I expected them to be. Now, this week is going to really be a big tell-all in terms of, can they beat an elite defense? Can they, sustain this same offensive success that they had in the first 2 weeks against a team like the Bills, who might have the best defense in football, So, I think week 3 is going to be like a really important week in terms of just who is this Rams team and just how good can they be offensively and even defensively too, because the Bills' offense is freaking amazing this year. So
yeah, it's fun to hear people say the Bills' offense is amazing this year, because I haven't even said that in years. So actually, since I've been alive, really, like, this is the most excited we've been about a passing game in forever. But you spoke about Sean McVay's mind a little bit. And he's a genius. He is just he's very smart at just putting together the right people, leading them in the right ways. And if I remember correctly, over the offseason, he said he wanted to have almost like a Kyle Shanahan-like run attack. And you guys have 3 pretty talented running backs. Like, none of them are really head and shoulders above the other. But you got Cam Akers, who I guess he separated his rib cartilage this past game, and I didn't have that on my NFL bingo board of injuries. I've never really heard of a guy doing that in a game. So, and then there's Malcolm Brown, who he had pinky surgery on Monday, and then Darrell Henderson kind of, took over, and he looked pretty good against the Eagles, getting almost, 6 yards a carry, maybe more. So
like 8.1.
Yeah, 8.1. Yeah, even better then. But so how is that room shaping up, and who do you think is going to be healthy this weekend against the Bills?
Yeah, so I mean, this running back by committees depends on how you look at it. If you're just a football fan who wants, a productive running game, you probably love it. If you're a fantasy player like myself and someone who has stock and certain guys, you're probably ready to rip your hair out. And so, I mean, like you said, all 3 guys are talented. And it was weird in this past game because Cam Akers, it looked like, the Rams were really interested in getting him a lot more involved in week 2. And, to start of the game, I think he had the first 3 carries, and the Rams were in the red zone. I believe they were right inside the 10-yard line, and they looked like, they were going to feed him all the way into the end zone. And so he would have got his first NFL touchdown, I think, on that drive, but he got tackled, and it was kind of awkward. He kind of landed on his head, and it looked, a lot scarier than it turned out to be, because he came off the field in a lot of pain. But like you said, it was that rib cartilage injury. They listed him as day-to-day, so we don't know for sure if he's going to be back this weekend or not. I would probably err on the side of caution, especially with, like you mentioned, Darrell Henderson back there and then Malcolm Brown back there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Akers doesn't go. And even if he does go, I don't, expect a big workload for him anyways. And then, like you mentioned, Brown also got hurt. He broke one of his fingers, and then he had surgery on Monday, I believe it was. And so he's also questionable coming into this game. Now, I think Sean McVay kind of indicated that Brown is going to be ready to go in this week. He's going to play.
That's insane. 6 days after surgery?
Yeah, they said, I think they're just going to splint it up and just kind of send him out there. Now, I don't know to what degree he's going to play. He might just be like a blocking back or, an emergency kind of player or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But, I mean, he's a freaking tough dude. So if there's anyone that could do it, it's him. But and what's ironic about it all is that Henderson actually wasn't 100% last week, because in training camp he got a hamstring injury, and it kind of hampered him for like a few weeks where he couldn't play. And then In week 1, he barely played, and then last week he said he was about 80%. So, all three of these guys have some nicks and knacks here and there.
Yeah.
For me, I would probably expect Brown and Henderson to play and kind of split some work, though I think it might be like a 75% to Henderson, 25% to Brown kind of work
that
share.
makes sense.
With Akers probably not going, but I wouldn't be surprised with anything really at this point.
And then I know they even got Robert Woods involved in the run game a little bit. He scored on a run, I think, last week. That really helped me in one of my leagues. Just kidding. I won by like 30. Sorry, Faz. But moving into the wide receivers, like Kupp and Woods are really good, and Woods is probably maybe the most underrated wide receiver in football. Like I've thought that ever since he was a Bill. I was really sad to see him go. You guys did just extend him, but you guys also just extended Jalen Ramsey. But you also extended Aaron Donald, I think, semi-recently. So, like, how... Cooper Kupp. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But, like, how is all that working? Like, it seems like you guys are the Saints, and you're just pretending that the cap doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams have a really creative front office. So, they've done some weird things in the past in terms of, like, they like to include these things called palindromes in their contracts. So this doesn't really have anything to do with anything. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. But I think it kind of just shows, like, how creative they are in terms of they like to sneak in, like, numbers that mean something to guys in their contracts. So instead of paying someone $8 million in a year, they might pay him $8 million and like $23 or something because his jersey number is 23 or because he was born on the 23rd or something like that. But in terms of the salary cap, I mean, I don't even know. It's pretty insane to think now. The Rams are going to be in cap issues like from here moving on forward in terms of they're kind of taking a stars and scrubs approach in terms of, we want to invest in 5, 6, 7 guys, a lot of money, like top 5 at their respective positions type deals.
Yeah.
And then everyone else, is going to have to suffer in terms of the money, which is kind of what they're doing right now. At inside linebacker, they have guys who are a bunch of either late day 3 picks or undrafted free agents, same as the corner, some guys on the offensive line. So, you have certain guys like Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and Cooper Kupp and now Woods too, who are making a ton of money. Jared Goff as well.
Obviously.
And then you have, certain guys that just aren't really making anything. You got 2 guys at inside linebacker that are getting paid peanuts. You got 2 corners that are hardly making anything, 3 safeties that are hardly making anything. So it's kind of just a balance now. It's working right now. Obviously, the Rams are taking a big risk, obviously, because if you invest so much in one guy and don't have really any assets left over to pay anyone else, if that guy happens to get hurt, obviously that's a big issue. But as of right now, knock on wood, everything's been good. And this is just, the approach that they're going for. And, so far it's working. So you can't really knock it too bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're 2-0. They beat the Cowboys and the Eagles, 2 of the teams that were, favored to win their divisions over there in the NFC East. And I wanted to talk about Jared Goff, but first, since you mentioned all the no-names on the defense, like obviously Aaron Donald's going to disrupt almost every single play. Jalen Ramsey, I don't know if he'll lock up Diggs all day, but, he'll at least keep Diggs in check like the Jets and the Dolphins weren't able to. I think Diggs is going to have a challenge. And earlier today, he said, yeah, Ramsey's good, but I trust Josh Allen, and I think I'm going to get open. I think I'm going to make enough plays. Who are the other guys on this defense that are some of those value guys that are like kind of stepping into their roles and, doing their job to say, like Bill Belichick?
Yeah. So, I mean, the number one option for me, the guy that, like, I'm loving every second of it, and I had high expectations for him, was the opposite corner from Jalen Ramsey. His name is Darius Williams. So, he's starting on the boundary for the first time in his career this year. He's a former undrafted free agent.
Okay.
He kind of bounced between the practice squad. He was with the Ravens at one point, and they let him go. He came to the Rams. And then, so last season, he got a little bit of playing time in the regular season. He looked pretty impressive. And last season, in the preseason, he got a lot of run, and I was like, man, this guy looks pretty good. Like, I don't know, he's making a lot of plays on the ball. And so the Rams elected, to start him this season opposite Jalen Ramsey, and he's been outstanding. Now, the Rams, they play it wise in terms of they know what Jalen Ramsey's capable of, so they essentially are taking, the safety typically in cover 1 or cover 3 when there's a single high safety, and they're shading him towards Williams, which obviously makes sense. You're going to offer that guy more help than you are offering Jalen Ramsey.
So, yeah, for sure.
Right. But Williams is playing great. Like in the last game against Carson Wentz, he was targeted 3 times, and he gave up 1 catch for 25 yards and had a game, like momentum shifting interception. So He
Okay.
was actually allowing only a 25.0 passer rating in the last game, which is funny because if Carson Wentz just threw the ball in the dirt every single snap, he would have had a 39.0 passer rating. He would have had a better passer rating by throwing the ball in the ground every snap rather
Then
than
actually
targeting
throwing.
Darius Williams.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and like he's allowing the lowest passer rating out of all the corners on the team. So I think he's doing a fantastic job right now. He's stepping up. He's proving himself correct and the Rams' front office correct for taking a shot on him. But outside of him, you got guys like Micah Kaiser, an inside linebacker who just won NFC Defensive Player of the Week with his 16 tackles. He also had a forced fumble on the first drive, which the Rams recovered and scored on.
Gotcha.
And next to him, you got guys like Kenny Young, and so there's a lot of like no name, I guess you can call them, contributors now. Some of them are better than others, but that's the approach the Rams took, and a lot of these guys are stepping up as of right now.
That seems like what the Sean McDermott approach, even just like surrounding your the younger players who maybe are more unproven or late round guys with like the elite level talent, and just finding the guys that you can bring the most out of. So that sounds like the Bills' framework for it. So Josh Allen might have his hands full with this defense this weekend. But before we talk about Josh Allen or anything, we'll talk about Jared Goff real quick. When I first heard about that 4-year, $134 million extension, I thought it would age like a glass of milk on a warm day. But he hasn't been lights out to start the year, but he's been reliable. He hasn't lost you guys games for the first 2 weeks of the season. How do Rams fans feel about Jared Goff as their quarterback? Because I feel like after his outstanding year 2 years ago, they might have been a little shaky after last year.
Yeah, I mean, like you described it pretty well there. Now, I think most fans are happy to have his back. I think they, will kind of ride or die with Jared Goff. Now, I'm a little bit more reserved in terms of, I feel like I clearly see who he is as a player, and I know who he is as a player, and that's a guy who's very accurate when given a clean pocket. He's a guy who's going to play very well in structure. He obviously fits Sean McVay's system very well, clearly. He's a rhythm passer. He can make plays. He's got a great arm. But at the end of the day, he's not a guy who's going to create out of structure. He doesn't have much mobility. He's obviously affected highly against the blitz when, defenders are bearing down on him. But it really all depends, I guess, at the end of the day, just how creative the offensive line can be with their pass pro. Because, in 2018, they were great. Jared Goff was great. In 2019, they were not great. And Jared Goff was subpar, just like they were. And so I think, he's going to go as far, really, as the offensive line allows him. And, so far, it's been good. But, that Bills defensive line is pretty good, too. So, it could switch up at any moment in time now. I think for most fans, are, going to have Jared Goff's back, and they're really happy that he's the quarterback.
Definitely happy they got, maybe happy they got him over Carson Wentz, at least, from the injury issues and everything. I would say that they got the right end of the stick there. And, obviously the Rams don't see a lot of the Bills. We'd see each other like once every 4 years. Do the fans, that you see, do they have an impression of Josh Allen? Do they have, any narrative they're like draft narratives they're still following? Or is it just he's a young quarterback and who the hell knows what he is, but he looks good right now?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Rams fans, I haven't seen a ton of talk about, Josh Allen and the Bills. Like you said, obviously we're not very familiar opponents. Once every 4 years, essentially, is when they play.
Yeah.
But, like, just looking at league-wide and on Twitter and just, talking heads, really, I think a lot of people are, still cemented in terms of their pre-draft evaluation of who Josh Allen was. He's a guy who's mobile. He's going to create out of structure. He's got an absolute cannon of an arm, obviously.
Yeah.
And he can make some throws that other quarterbacks can only dream of making. But at the same time, he's going to do some really weird and boneheaded things. So similar to Jared Goff, I guess, to some degree. But I feel like Jared Goff is a lot more reserved and safe with his play as opposed to Josh Allen, who, he doesn't care. He's going to let it rip. And so
yeah,
it might be a 70-yard touchdown. It might be an interception. I like that pass at the end of the game there against the Jets. I don't recall which one it was. I think it was like towards the right sideline near the end of the game where he just absolutely ripped it. And it was pretty close to getting picked off. Or sorry, not the Jets. It was the Dolphins
game.
Dolphins game, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nearly picked off, but it was like such a good throw that it was actually a completion, and it was like, whoa,
Mm.
what the hell are you doing throwing that? But
I think was
you
that
know,
the one where Stephon Diggs like jumped like 5 feet in the air and caught it on the left? Is that the one you're talking about?
I can't remember who it was.
I
It was like
just.
near the end of the game, and it was kind of like
Mhm.
a, why are you throwing that? But you know, when you got an arm like you got it, you know, like he's got, you can really just get away with things sometimes that other guys can't. So
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's many preconceived notions in terms of like Rams fans and Josh Allen.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but we've done these crossover episodes with Jets and Dolphins guys who obviously those people are going to have opinions. Jets fans are
Right.
still convinced Sam Darnold's better, and he might be, but it's just he's never had anybody around him to give him the chance
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
Before we hopped on live here, you were talking a little bit about how the Rams have gone about shutting down Dallas as like such a powerful offense and the Eagles. Can you talk about that a little bit, like just the different defensive schemes they were doing, and how where you think the area of concern might be for the Bills?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that the Rams have shown over the last 2 weeks is that they're happy to let offenses get 5 or 7 or 9 yard gains, really anything underneath, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see it in the way the corners are playing, particularly the corners. Oftentimes they got a lot of bail technique. They're gonna line up and press, but as soon as that ball snapped, they're opening their hips and they're running, and they're really keeping everything in front. You can see it in the safety play as well. And they've done a great job, obviously, keeping everything in front because I don't recall. Dallas obviously had the one deep completion of Michael Gallup, which was called the pass interference. But other than that, I don't think they completed really any deep passes.
Mm-hmm.
And Philly was the same story. Really, they didn't do anything deep. And so, but at the end of the day, these are teams with guys like Deshaun Jackson and Jalen Rager and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, like
Michael
guys
Gallup,
that should,
yeah, all of them
yeah,
can.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the Rams have done a really good job, just kind of allowing teams to, if you want to dink and dunk your way down the field, if you want to have 12 to 15 to 17 play drives that you're going to score on without making a mistake once, great, we'll let you do that, but you're not going to beat us over the top kind of thing. And so, I think they've done a great job doing that. I think they've had a lot of good communication in their zone coverage because the Rams run a ton of zone, a lot more zone than they do man.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen defensive coordinator Brandon Staley bring a lot of the same principles that Vic Fangio had in in Buffalo, or not Buffalo, sorry, in Chicago and in Denver, where Brandon Staley was with him at both stops. And so the Rams are running a lot of cover 4, a lot of quarters coverage, a lot of cover 6, some cover 3. So they're mixing and matching a lot of things. It's a lot of zone coverage, and it's worked out well right now for that secondary and that defense as a whole.
Yeah, then that's. Obviously, people are focused on like the Allen deep ball, like those are the plays that are making like the highlight reels and everything. Especially since last year he was one of the worst, if not maybe the worst, deep ball passer in the NFL. But you say these long drives, and the only game I went to, regular season game I went to last year was against the Giants, and twice in that game, the Bills had like 90-plus yard touchdown drives. This past, I can't remember in which game, but I know they've had a couple of them this year too. So if that's what the Rams defense is going to give, I would feel like semi-confident in the Bills to like consistently, get those long drives. Josh Allen has developed so much as a decision maker. That was like his rookie year. He did look lost out there sometimes. The throws he would make, the decisions, just throwing across his body and all that. So Sam Darnold did it in the Jets-Niners game. He was like running left through, or no, against the Bills, and like Matt Milano got an interception like that. But if we got Cole Beasley running routes in the middle, Dawson Knox, he's our the young tight end. He's hurt. I think it's a concussion, and I think he's probably going to be out for this game. But he also has fumbling issues, so I would almost I don't want people to get upset about me saying like I don't want Dawson Knox to play, but I just don't think we'll get turnovers from the rest of our tight ends like we do with Dawson Knox. He's a much more raw talent, like we saw with Josh Allen. But we have running backs that can catch out of the backfield. So if that's the blueprint to win a game against the Rams, I won't say like I think the Bills will execute it perfectly, but I think that is, especially with the injuries the Bills have at linebacker right now, with Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano. If they pick apart the middle of the field for us, we pick apart your intermediate game where Josh Allen improved last year. This could actually be like a really high scoring game. And that's not something that, I would say the Bills have a chance of winning a high-scoring game in the past years. So this really could be a really fun one.
I got some questions for you, actually. Let me slide one in.
Yeah, go for it.
So, yeah, with that being said, like, what do you see potentially as maybe the biggest advantage or even disadvantage for the Bills when you kind of just look at the Bills and the Rams coming up in this week?
Advantage, I would say, I know your offensive line has like really played well, and I won't discount that whatsoever. But the Bills have been getting at the quarterback pretty well over the first couple of weeks. I can't remember how many sacks they had on Fitzpatrick, but they had 3 against Darnold. They were pressuring him all game long. They had the interception was basically like a coverage interception where there was just so much pressure he couldn't do anything and he just chucked it up, and there's nowhere for it to go but into Milano's arms. I think on the defensive side, that's really where we're gonna do well, is just getting pressure on Jared Goff. And he's not the most mobile guy in the world. I've seen him make plays with his legs before, so he has the ability, but I don't know if he can do it all game long. So on defense, I like that. And then on offense, I don't know if we have like a superstar matchup really anywhere that's just 5 stars for the Bills. Like your defense is playing relatively well. I'd like to take advantage of like your outside linebackers. I think that would be where the Bills could have the most offensive success. But if Josh Allen, I know, is going to go at Ramsey after him calling him trash a few years ago when he was still in Jacksonville, he's going to want to make a statement, and I'm going to love it if he does, and I'm going to love it if he tries and doesn't do it, because you got to be a gamer when you're going against someone like Ramsey. But it's going to be hard to beat him over the top. If Dable's very good at offensive game planning or offensive coordinator. He's actually a Buffalo product. He went to my high school, and so that's just super cool to see. And he could be a head coach next year. So on defense, I would say it's our defensive line against our offensive line. On offense, I say exploiting that intermediate range and just Dable making sure that he's good at adjusting. He's good at making in-game adjustments. And, using the play action like we have in the first couple weeks, because, it's no secret play action is just the most successful way to run plays in the NFL, from an efficiency standpoint, at least. Yeah, hope that answered your question.
I like that. I think the one area that I'm definitely concerned about that, it might not yield like a 70-yard touchdown or, something like that, but something I think that could quietly, come back once and then again throughout the game is, I think Cole Beasley could give a lot of trouble to Troy Hill in the slot there. Right? Cole Beasley is obviously one of the best route runners in the league. He's obviously, his job is run 7 yards, convert first down. Run 7 yards, convert first. Yeah. And so, Troy Hill's given up a lot of receptions this year now. He did pull himself down an interception last week against Carson Wentz, but he's definitely, I think, one vulnerable piece there when it comes to just trying to cover Cole Beasley, because I don't really think that, mano-a-mano really anyone can. So never mind, the worst rated corner on the team.
He's honestly like, I talked about Robert Woods as one of the most underrated receivers in football. Like Cole Beasley and John Brown might be up there too. Like even like the corners in practice and training camp and everything, they all said like Cole Beasley's unguardable. I don't know how this guy doesn't get talked about more. And like I was shocked. We were putting out some like stats just because obviously we have Stephon Diggs now. In case you guys didn't hear, we have Stephon Diggs on the team. He's actually a Bill. So I'm putting out wide receiver stats. And, Cole Beasley is 3rd in the NFL in 20-plus yard catches right now, which is not what you would expect to say. And it is 2 weeks into the season, so there's probably some regression due, but, like, you don't expect that. So I could see Cole Beasley having a good game. I didn't know that was who your slot corner was. So, but, I feel like, the safeties might be able to help on that. I don't know how they really can in the slot. That could be a little difficult to handle, but that could be fun. I might slot him into my fantasy flex or something.
I think that wouldn't be a terrible option.
Yeah, and since I said that, we'll move in case you guys don't know, so also as a writer for Fantasy Pros, I do a lot of listening of their stuff, reading their articles. They do a lot of great work over there. So we'll talk about fantasy specifically because there were so many injuries last week. And as someone who has Christian McCaffrey in one league, I was struggling to go to the waiver wire because my other running back is Joe Mixon, and I don't even love that much. So, we'll start at the quarterback position, kind of work our way down, actually, because Jimmy G went out. For fantasy owners of Jimmy Garoppolo, who could they be targeting on the waiver wire to stream this week?
Yeah, so, I wrote a couple of pieces on PFF this week covering things like that, streamers and, just guys to pick up on the waiver wire. So one guy that I'm really intrigued by this week, your guy, Phil Rivers.
This
isn't
vodka, but it needs to be.
Yeah, right? It's a little too early for that. Yeah, I don't know, man. He's not throwing the ball as much as he used to when he was in LA and
Yeah.
San Diego, but I don't know. I feel like the Jets are obviously not a very good defense. That's pretty clear.
Hmm.
And he's been like decent. He's been decent so far, and so that's definitely a guy I would target. He's obviously available in a lot of leagues.
Hmm.
He's not very rostered, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, a guy you could stream this week that again is not very rostered, but he scares the absolutely hell out of me is Mitch Trubisky. He's got
Okay.
maybe the best matchup in the league because he's playing the Falcons this
It's
week, and
true.
the
Yeah.
Falcons have given up the most points to opposing quarterbacks this season, and so Trubisky could that might be a shootout to some degree, and so
Hmm.
I think Trubisky could be a guy you could pick up at that quarterback spot. That would probably be my number one option.
Trubisky. Yeah, I picked him up just in case anything would happen just after week 1 because I figured he's
Yeah,
not the greatest quarterback for your actual football team, but for fantasy,
right.
he's what you want.
Yeah, he's got mobility too, right? So those rushing yards will catch up real quick.
Yeah, for sure. And for running backs, obviously Mike Davis was a target just because he's in Carolina, but I don't even like him that much because he's not Christian McCaffrey. They're not going to use him in the same way. Who are some running back guys that you like this week for waiver wires?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for someone to immediately step in and potentially produce for the next 3, 4, 5 kind of weeks, like you mentioned, Mike Davis is a guy who I would definitely have up high up on my list.
Hmm.
He's probably got the biggest workload ahead of him in terms of all the available guys on the waiver wire. He had 8 targets in the last game. He caught all 8 of them.
Oh, okay.
So if you're in PPR leagues, that's going to be something very useful for you.
Hmm.
But there's a couple of options at the running back spot. So Darrell Henderson, like we talked about earlier in this episode here,
Hmm.
he's a guy. We don't know exactly what his workload is going to be moving forward, and but I think even at least in this next week, you could probably expect a pretty good workload with how injured guys like Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers are.
Hmm.
Now I don't know what that means, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks down the line, but he looked probably the most best out of all the guys that are available, and probably is the most talented. But
Hmm.
his workload is probably the biggest question mark as well. But then, there's some other interesting guys that may not even get picked up. Guys like Devontae Freeman, who just got signed by the Giants. We don't know what he's going to do. Their offensive line is horrendous.
So bad.
I mean, they made Saquon Barkley look like a UDFA, and that's pretty hard to do. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't exactly count on Devontae Freeman, throwing up RB1 numbers or anything. But, he should get a lot of volume. If you don't want to go with him, you can go with a guy like Deion Lewis, who's in New York as well.
Hmm.
And then the last guy that probably catches my eye is Jerick McKinnon.
Yep, that's who I was gonna say. Yeah, I picked him up in the one league today.
That's a great pick in my opinion. So obviously Raheem Mostert got hurt. He might miss a couple weeks.
Yep.
Kevin Coleman got hurt. It sounds like he's going to miss a couple weeks.
And he's also not great, even if
right,
he wasn't.
He's also not that good.
Yeah.
And Jerick McKinnon is the next guy up, and not only that, but he's talented. Like he fits that offense very well. He's got pass catching upside.
Hmm.
So if you're playing in a PPR league, that's exactly a guy you're going to want to target.
Hmm.
And he's really in line for a decent workload now. I don't know if he's going to touch the ball 20 times. He's probably going to have to split carries with Jeff Wilson, who's the fourth running back. But that's definitely another good option. I think at the running back spot, there's some very intriguing names.
Hmm. Yeah, and honest question about running backs because obviously Darrell Henderson against the Bills from a matchup perspective isn't good, but from a volume perspective, that's what you need when you're looking for a running back to fill your spot. So for people who are like, I'm not going to go pick up Darrell Henderson because he's playing the Bills.
Right.
Would you advise that you always want to follow volume before matchup?
I mean, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I guess you got to just kind of, I would take it on a case-by-case basis. So what I mean by that is, for example, a guy like Mike Davis. I don't expect Mike Davis to produce a ton this week because the Chargers, and don't quote me on this, but I think the Chargers are allowing the least points to opposing running backs throughout the season so far. So Davis is not a guy to expect to produce in the ground game. But with that being said, I'm still intrigued by him because I know that he's going to catch a lot of cheap, 3-yard passes, dump offs, check downs, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And in PPR leagues, it doesn't matter if you're taking that for 5 yards or no yards.
7 catches for 30 yards is 10 points. So
exactly. And he had 8 of them last week, and he was targeted 8 times, and he didn't even start the game, and he didn't play the whole game. And so, Teddy Bridgewater is not a guy who wants to push the ball down the field. He just that's not who he is as a quarterback. And, that offensive line has been getting beat up a little bit lately, and that Chargers defense is unreal. So, for example, he's got a terrible matchup, but I would still be intrigued by the matchup because, he might have 30 yards rushing on 20 carries, but
Yeah.
he might also have 11 receptions and another 30 yards receiving. So I take it by case kind of thing. If, Darrell Henderson is a guy who's probably not going to catch that many passes because the Rams have so many pass game weapons. So that kind of, dampens the intrigue when you look at, the volume versus the defense slash matchup. So, I just kind of take it case by case. And typically it's like, is this guy going to produce as a receiver? Does he have receiving upside? If he does, the matchup matters a little bit less. If he doesn't, then it might be something to knock him for.
And then moving on to wide receivers, as a Devontae Adams and Julio Jones owner in a guillotine league, I am terrified because it looks like they're both going to play, but we both, Julio when he's injured is a different guy. Devontae Adams when he's injured is also a very different guy. So wide receivers on the waiver wire, it didn't look like there was really a whole lot attractive out there this week.
Yeah, I mean, the number one option for me, and, he should be owned in every single league at this point. And it's funny because I had a lot of question marks about his fit and why he was number 3 on the team that he is. Russell Gage from the Falcons. So
okay.
Even better if Julio Jones is missing for you, you can plug him in. He's valuable as the receiver 3 there. So if Julio is hurt and he's missing time, he's going to get bumped up. He's going to get, a greater target share, obviously. And he's going to be essentially the wide receiver 2. So that would be super intriguing because right now he actually has 20 targets on the season. That ranks 2nd on the team.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy when you think about Julio Jones and Calvin.
Yeah.
He has 15 receptions. That ranks 2nd on the team. He has 160 receiving yards. That ranks 3rd. And he's got a touchdown, which again ranks 2nd. So, he played 82% of the snaps in week 2.
Wow.
And I think that's 100% a guy you want to add. That's a guy who has like flex / receiver 3 upside. If you got, a league with 3 receivers, that requires you to start 3 of them. And then, there's some less intriguing names, I guess, but, if your league is a little bit deeper and there's not that many options, a guy like Isaiah Ford from the Dolphins is very intriguing. He's not owned anywhere. He's literally got a 0% roster rate.
Yeah.
But he finished as the wide receiver 19 last week. He had, 14.6 fantasy points. He led the team with 8 targets, which is, again, pretty wild.
Wow.
He had 7 receptions, 76 receiving yards, and he played 63% of the snap. So, I think he's going to be a little bit up and down moving forward, but when you got Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing the ball, he doesn't give a damn. He's going to let it rip. He's got a good matchup again this week against the Jaguars, who start DJ Hayden in the slot, and he's one of the worst corners. No offense, DJ, but one of the worst corners when it comes to fantasy points allowed per route. So I would be very intrigued by adding a guy like Ford, maybe even if just for this week.
Yeah, and the Dolphins are going to be in shootouts with Fitzpatrick all year long. Their defense is bad. Fitzpatrick never gives up. So, there are going to be games where, like, against the Patriots, they're only going to put up 11 points, but Fitzpatrick's always a lock for a good amount of yardage. So that's at least something. For tight ends, I got one I'm excited to use in FanDuel this week because with CJ Uzama out, I think Drew Sample on the Bengals could actually be like, one of those tight ends that, you pick up in week 3, and then he ends up doing pretty well because he obviously had a pretty good rapport with Joe Burrow after last week against the Browns. So, for me, if I'm picking up a tight end this week, and luckily I didn't have to, but I would probably go with Drew Sample, and that it's just one of those names, like when you hear like, wait, Darren Waller? Who the fuck is this guy? Like, he's going to end up as the fucking tight end 3 at the end of the year. So, I like Sample a little bit myself.
Yes, that's a great option. I have him listed here on my streamers for the week at the tight end, one of the streamers for the tight end position. Now, like you said, as soon as Uzama went down, Sample's usage rate, target share, all that stuff went flying up, which, was expected. He played in 59% of the snaps in week 2. I think he had 7 receptions on 8 targets, which is pretty crazy. Rookie quarterbacks need a security blanket. They're going to look at that tight ends a lot. So that's a great pick. Now, there's other guys that intrigue me as well. So Mo Alley Cox from the Colts.
Ooh, true.
As long as Jack Doyle's out, as long as Trey Burton's out, and Alley Cox is starting, big weapon. He had 111 receiving yards in his last game, and
he's like the only one there now. Yeah,
he had like 3 or 4 amazing catches. Like our defenders draped all over him, like you got Moss type stuff. So it was really impressive. I think you got to look at the Cowboys. Obviously, Blake Jarwin went down with an injury. Now Dalton Schultz is starting there. And he had 10 targets in this last week. And, he had 88 yards receiving on 9 receptions. So that was pretty intriguing. And he had a touchdown as well. Now, I don't expect him to sustain, 9 targets per week moving forward. But,
for sure.
in that passing offense, I mean, slot anyone in, they're probably going to produce. So, and they're going to score a lot of touchdowns. So that's an intriguing one to me. And then the last one, and he's owned in about 17% of leagues right now, is Jordan Reed from the San
Oh,
Francisco
yeah,
49ers.
true. He's not your normal backup tight end. He's really
No,
not.
he is not. He's incredibly talented, so good. He scored 2 touchdowns last week. Now, he did only play 46% of the snaps, which is a bit of an issue, but he had a team high 8 targets, 7 receptions, and then he had 50 yards as well as the 2 touchdowns that I mentioned. And George Kittle's hurt right now. Their receiving core is absolutely decimated. Deebo Samuel's out, and
Kendrick Bourne's their number one.
Kendrick Bourne's their number one right now. Brandon Ayuk, I think, got a little bit banged up. They lost 2 running backs. So, if they're looking for a guy in the red zone, it's probably going to be Jordan Reed. And if they're looking for someone with volume, Jordan Reed's probably your guy. That's probably my favorite ad of the week, I'd say, moving forward, at least for the immediate future.
Yeah, and Nick Mullins, he's not a joke. He's a backup quarterback. He's nothing better. But last year when he was called on, he actually did his job. He actually passed pretty well. I remember it was Thursday Night Football. Was it against the Raiders? I can't remember. But it was just a weird game where Nick Mullins threw 4 touchdowns or something. So I'm not going to say that, he's going to do that every week, but he has the potential to support fantasy options, which when you have a backup quarterback coming in, you might not be excited about that. We'll finish off with defense here because kickers are pointless. I like Washington a little bit. I mean, Cleveland could put up a lot of points. They did it against the Bengals, but the Bengals are a college defense, so who really knows? And even against the Cardinals, they only got 4 points, but still, the Cardinals are an explosive offense. That was not a tall order. They did allow 30 points, but they still came away with 44 fantasy points. So I think against Cleveland, they could get Baker in trouble and get some interceptions out of him.
Ironically enough, I'm going to go on the opposite side and say Cleveland's D. They're only rostered, I think, about 4% of the leagues out there, so they're pretty much available everywhere. I mean, come on, Washington's offense does not look good. They've scored 5 touchdowns in the season, which ranks 19th among NFL teams, and they've allowed 8 sacks, which ranks 30th. So that O-line is a big issue. And the Browns haven't looked great defensively. I think they rank 22nd in scoring right now, but they got some interesting players. Obviously, they got Myles Garrett, who's I don't know how you're gonna block him because the best of the best can barely block him. Never mind, a subpar offensive line like the Washington that has, but I think Cleveland is probably an interesting matchup here. I would probably lean with Cleveland. Even if you drop them after a week, I think they're a really interesting streaming option for the week.
Yeah, that's the nature of streaming. You just pick it up, drop them. But we're in agreement. Bet the under on the Browns-Redskins game. I don't know what it is, but it's probably hitting the under.
Right. I wouldn't expect a ton of offense there.
Yeah, no, probably not. So I think that's all we got today. Sosa, I really appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure, even though you're sitting there in my freshman dorm room with those lights. But it was a pleasure. And maybe when the Rams face us again in 4 years, I'm awful at planning things in advance in a week. But love to have you back on. Maybe we can talk some fantasy again at some point in the season.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. It was fun. I'm used to being a little bit more uptight when it comes to a podcast and having everything a little bit more structured as opposed to kind of just hanging back. So it was fun. But maybe if both teams make the Super Bowl, we'll have to do it again. You never know.
You know what? This could be the year for it. Actually, real quick, I do want to ask score prediction for Sunday. I'll give mine. You give yours. And I know you're probably going to pick the Rams to win, just in case anybody that follows you is listening here.
Yeah, I mean, I could see either team winning, obviously, but I feel like the Rams they got something different going on this year. I feel like they're going to be able to bait Josh Allen into a mistake or two, maybe. And if they are capable of doing so, they're going to have to capitalize. Obviously, if they don't capitalize, it stands for nothing. But I think they're going to be able to hold back on defense and kind of do just enough to win. So, my prediction, I'm going to go with 24-17 for the Rams.
All right, I think I'm going a little higher scoring than that. I think I'm feeling a 30-28 win for the Bills. So the Rams do cover the spread, but for all the gambling addicts like myself. But I think that one thing that McDermott loves to do is get the people who have struggled really involved. And Tyler Bass, our rookie kicker, is someone who's really struggled over the first couple of weeks. Not to any fault of his own. He got laces on one kick, so it was just not a good situation. Then another one, it looked like it went in, but they called it as not a field goal, and it went like kind of over the upright, so you couldn't review it or anything.
Right.
So I think they're going to want to get Tyler Bass some confidence, have him make some big kicks in this game. I'm going to say a 30-28 win for the Bills, but I'm wrong a lot. So we're going to find out on this Sunday. Make sure that for everyone out there in Buffalo, make Picasso's Pizza a part of your football traditions. I can't do that every single week because I'm on Long Island, but you are there, so you can do it. So just get Picasso's. They're our friends. You listen to us. You're our friends. That means Picasso's is your friends too. So make sure you get them for Sunday, for Trainwreck Sports, for Sosa, for Kevin. See ya on Sunday for the pregame show.